Already. I did it. It's done. We're live.
Hey!
Here it is. We're here. What's that? Jeez. All right. So Mike is wandering the neighborhood of Cheektowaga in search of good internet. And he'll be back shortly. We are joined by Brian yesterday. Hey Brian, how are you?
I'm good. It sounds like he's in a padded room or something. He's like stomping around and everything. But no, I'm great. It's great to be here with all of you. It's been a while. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. And of course Kevin is with us, and we're gonna have like this. So we're gonna get Mike in, and Mike has a story to tell because we lost him yesterday at a really weird time. You know, that was very controversial among our readers because they all thought that he just bailed the second we started talking about how good Montreal was. And that
well, you know what was ironic about that is it was a power outage, which he will talk about. But you know, when we lost Mike, we had a power outage because he was supplying us a lot of energy yesterday.
Yeah.
Was it the moment my text meme arrived on his phone? I sent him something yesterday, and it was a picture of Santa, the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and the Toronto Maple Leafs logo, and it said, "Things adults should stop believing it."
Pre-show, and then Mike will give his thing because today is Lou Gehrig Day for Major League Baseball, and it's really high time that they did this. I mean, it's really, they could have done this like for the last 80 years, but they didn't. But it's nice that they're doing it now, and it's interesting because then you get to relive Lou Gehrig's career. And what I found fascinating was, and I'm not sure I knew this before, was we all know that he played the most consecutive games, and we know that he broke Cal Ripken's streak. We know that he pinch hit, and that's what started his career. And, he basically, that's what they call by getting Wally pipped, because Wally Pipp is the guy he replaced. But what I didn't know was that's the only pinch hit of his career. That first pinch hit was the only pinch hit of his career. And I didn't know that. So there you go. Kevin, did you know that?
I didn't, but I'm not surprised at that because he never left the lineup to go and be a pinch hitter. So
yeah, you don't think about it. It's just something you didn't think about.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. Mike, I like the orange extension cord in the background there.
Well, it's symbolic of my story, since I figured to put a power cord up here.
Yes, go ahead, Mike. Tell us your story.
So as I was being insulted by Karine Hines yesterday with her making fun of the Maple Leafs and in support of her Montreal Canadiens, who will lose in 5 games to the Winnipeg Jets, all of a sudden the power went out, and I heard a loud pop, which I thought was like a circuit breaker blowing in my house or something. It was just, I thought something happened in my house. Well, come to find out, as I walk outside, a 18-wheel truck had gone down a residential street, which is unbelievable that somebody would be stupid enough to do this.
Yeah.
And he snagged a power line that was hanging low going across the street. And instead of it just pulling the line, he started pulling the line, and he was pulling it down the street, and it snagged 2 or 3 telephone poles and knocked them all down.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So it knocked out power for 210 people for 6 hours, and they had
was
like
the driver from Montreal, Mike. Did you notice the plates?
It said Sacre Bleu on the side of the
Right.
But so, and of course this thing was parked in front of my house, so I couldn't even get out of the driveway even if I wanted to, without power for 6 hours. And then on top of that, by the way, but you could tell by the great internet signal I was having, it knocked out the internet until about 10:30, strategically just before the Leafs had their season-ending media availability. So thankfully but it was out. The internet was out for over 24 hours.
Oh my God.
Or for 18 hours, excuse me. And our power was out for 6 hours, all because some idiot was trying to make a shortcut to like Walmart to drop off a load of fertilizer or whatever the hell he was carrying.
If we lost the internet for 24 hours in our house, I think there'd be like a pig's head on a stake in the living room. That's what you'd see. I think you would see that
be like Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, it would really get rough. I mean, it was funny. So my son, who's on a roll lately, who like after saying his after he thinks that Mike Babcock looks like the dehydrated Tucker Carlson, which really is true. You have to look at it really carefully.
That's an insult to Tucker Carlson. I'm sorry.
No, it's really something. But also, so when Mike lost, he was studying. He studies right over there. So he's studying yesterday during the show and listening to me talk. and because they have school, they're still low, remote here. And he says to me, he says, you know what Mike's thing was like? It reminded me of the movie Elf, where like, without the Christmas spirit, the sleigh doesn't go, and like the leaf spirit was gone. And that, that you couldn't get enough people, there weren't enough Leaf fans in the world with any belief in anything anymore. And Mike's system just crashed. I thought that was pretty funny.
That makes sense. Yeah,
that makes one of us.
Analogy, yeah.
That makes one of us.
Perfect. All right, let's get going here. Ready? It's the 2nd of June. Sure is. I have a good memory of the 2nd of June I want to bring up, actually. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday. It's Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm going to do some lawn trimming, as you can see behind me, after the show.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
Yeah, Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz. That'd be Brian Metzer. And I'm Mecklin. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes to you every 24 hours. I was about to say every Monday through Friday at this time to fill in the comings and goings in Hockey World. And Brian, of course, is a Hockey Buzz alumni who is like one of the OG Hockey Buzzers way back to like the Blogspot days. Like,
is OG old guys? Is that what it stands for? OG is old guys.
Yeah, it works for me these days. Sure, yeah.
So if you remember, I started off on. I don't know. Most of you probably don't know this, but I started off on this thing called Blogspot, like during the original.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh yes.
So we're looking like in like 15 years, 15, 16, I don't know, 17 years ago now. And a couple guys who contacted me at the time was like, I get a little bit of a following going on, and they said wanted to write. Well, two of them are here, like Mike and Brian were two of the first people that contacted me. Another, oddly enough, would turn into Puck Daddy, but that's another story for another day. But
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, we got 2 out of 3. So but that was pretty funny. So here we are, and we're going to get into Montreal and Winnipeg, of course. We have to do that, but we have Brian. So with Brian comes the woes of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and all that is the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so Brian, what's going on? Like here, there's a lot of people. Suddenly, people were worried about Sullivan's job. All these things are flying around now. You get a sense that anything? What's going on? What are your feelings on this?
Right after the series, when I was looking at this, I thought there was a chance he could be in jeopardy, mainly because, and I'm talking about Mike Sullivan, he wasn't the coach of the new management team. Obviously, Ron Hextall and Brian Burke didn't select him. He comes with pedigree. He's won 2 cups in the not so distant past. And you thought that, he's he bought a lot of goodwill with the team and ownership thanks to that. And he would have been fine with Jim Rutherford. Well, with this new management team, I thought they might want their own guy. But now you're hearing that they're pretty comfortable with him still. They'll probably move forward with him. And to be honest, and I'm sure, I don't know where you guys fall on this, one of the biggest reasons I can think of, in addition to who he is, why he would not be terminated right now, is the Penguins coming off a pandemic season, coming off a year with not many fans. They don't want to pay 2 coaches. So
that's a massive factor.
And it makes it a lot easier to just keep a guy like Mike Sullivan, who obviously has a great track record too. It's not like you're keeping a guy who's terrible. He's been a great regular season coach. They have a lot of success. I've almost compared him to Mike Tomlin as of late because they've been a great regular season team, can't get it done in the playoffs. That's very Steelers-esque. But so that's number one. I think he will be back. That's going to be locked in. Obviously, Elliot Friedman's talking about that and everyone else around Canada and North America. I don't think the big 3 is going anywhere either. So when you look at that, I think some change is going to happen. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what that change will be.
Well, Mets, let me ask you this, because as somebody who had 4 Penguins in my fantasy hockey pool, which means I'm dead. I thought that they were basically on par with the Islanders in that series, and that the random element was the ineffectiveness of Tristan Jarry, especially in that brainless play in Game 5 where he put it on Josh Bailey's stick. And if Casey DeSmith had been healthy in Game 6, I think he would have been pulled after the 4-3 goal. I know
think he may have started that game, Mike, to be honest with you.
I like DeSmith as a backup, and I had, going into the series, confidence that Jarry could do well, but he didn't. I mean, where do you think they go with the goaltending? You think they just come back with Jarry and DeSmith?
Right now, I think it's going to be tough to sell Tristan Jarry as the starting goaltender of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So at the very least, he is going to have some form of competition in training camp, be it Casey DeSmith, be it a veteran. I still think that's the biggest mistake they made. And I can't blame them for making the mistake because we all got duped a little bit. The goaltending of the Pittsburgh Penguins from March 1st on was outstanding. In the month of March, they had the lowest goals against average in the league. They were playing outstanding hockey. They had essentially the best record in hockey next to the Vegas Golden Knights. And really, from that stage on, I think they were neck and neck with the Knights for the remainder of the season, and Colorado's in that mix, obviously. So I think that when you saw that happen, Burke and Hextall kind of got lulled into thinking, well, we're fine with Jarry and DeSmith. Unfortunately, DeSmith got hurt. They didn't have enough faith in Maxime Lagacé to put him into the playoffs, which I don't know why you wouldn't have tried that. The Penguins have proven when you put the greenhorn in, even for a game, they play pretty well in front of them. They really lock it down. And when you look at that, I know the Islanders are not the Buffalo Sabres, but in that game, he did get to play on the season finale. He posted a shutout and didn't face a shot over the final 10 plus minutes because the Penguins really locked it down for him. Now, I don't think he should have started a game, but when Tristan Jarry allows 2 goals in 13 seconds in game 6, I thought for sure he would at least make a switch there to get a little bit of momentum turning in the other direction, just based on the fact that what do you have to lose? It's win or go home. So you got to get something right. And then unfortunately, he doesn't do it. Jarry gives up another goal inside of 3 minutes. Then it was 2:59. They scored those 3 goals, and you're done for the year. They had no chance of coming back. Trotz locks it down.
Yeah.
Penguins were still getting scoring opportunities, but they couldn't break through. And unfortunately, they had been let down by their goaltending. Now, one reason that I say there's probably not a whole lot of change going to happen in terms of the huge changes is just that they did play really well for stretches of that series. I mean, they carried play for probably 5 of 6 games, but they couldn't get that extra big goal. They carried a lead into the third period in 4 of 6 games. I thought that is a Penguins hallmark. They usually lock those games down. Unfortunately, due to goaltending, they weren't able to do so. So you can make a case for some scoring woes that they had. They weren't tough enough probably in front of either net. That was a big issue for them as well, because that didn't do their goalie any favors. But when you stir in the fact that Ilya Sorokin was outstanding and Tristan Jarry wasn't, that ended up being a big difference maker.
A big thing that with the Penguins that I see, Mets, is I'm sure Hextall is going to test the trade market on like Letang and Malkin, but I think at the end of the day, it's hard to replace what Letang does. Marino can't do what Letang does on the power play. He's good, but he's not like that.
Yep.
Nobody keeps the puck in like Letang. He still gets 40 points a year, and he'll do that for the foreseeable future. So then it looks like Malkin is, if he wants to get out from under, is the guy to trade. I kind of wonder, is he going to try something like Malkin for Line or try something like that where it's like, salaries are close. It's like an NBA type trade, and see if the change does something, or will he just try and get out of it salary wise and go younger for that deal, but sort of stay in it competitively as much as they can? But I don't think he's going to do much to try and spend and improve the team for a 1-year basis. I don't think Hextall will do that.
No, I think you're right. And the thing is with both Malkin and Letang, they have 1 year remaining here. So I think they need both guys to be here to sell some tickets this year. The fan base will still want to keep that core together. Management or ownership seems to have an affection for keeping those 3 players together as well. You hear a lot about that in town, that Mario and Ron Burkle, along with Sidney Crosby, would love to keep that core intact. So it also does them a solid here if they wait till the end of next season and one of those guys walks in free agency. Then you pin the blame on them. It's a little bit easier to spin PR wise. But I do think
lose assets that way. That's the only problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because the Penguins have done that over the years too. I remember Robert Lang walking away as a free agent when Craig Patrick refused to trade him. And it was part of one of the most productive lines at that time for the Penguins, and he goes away for free. But then again, he didn't have a good track record for moving those pieces. You got a lot of Rico Fadas into the mix at that time too. So, but for me, I think that you're onto something though, Russ, with a hockey type deal here. And there's a lot of conversation going on in the city about maybe one of those Neil for Hornquist type deals. On paper, people raised an eyebrow and said, well, wait, you're giving up a potential 40 goal man for a guy that, if you're lucky, he's a 30-goal man and maybe a 25-goal man, but he brought a dynamic they didn't have. Right. He brought size, that tenacity, the physicality, and he changed kind of a culture here in terms of his desire to win and his competitive nature and not being shy about barking at people, including Sid. You saw them knocking heads from time to time when they played together. So I think that kind of trade could happen. It would be intriguing if it was somebody like Laine, just because it's, do you just want a change of scenery type of guy who can come and reharness some greatness that he had?
See what Crosby can do with them, see what it does for the power play.
Exactly. And that's an intriguing player. But I think that I still don't know that they will move one of those players. And, when you talked about Letang, he eats so many minutes, and they're tough minutes, and he plays in all scenarios. And during the playoffs, he was one of their best players again. I mean, he was all over the place. Yeah, he had a bad pinch that resulted in a goal, but his teammates helped him there too. No, the other guys are allowed to help.
Ryan, let me play devil's advocate a little bit here on all this. When Berkey and Hextall were brought in, I was told by a really good source who really knows what's going on there. One of the reasons they they didn't like Jim Rutherford leaving, but when he did leave, it was at least said, we'll bring in a new general manager. It turned out to be two guys. And at least they will be able to make the tough decisions. It was going to be hard for Jim. He had an affinity for a lot of different players, and they're going to be able to do it. And now I'm hearing from you that they're going to roll the dice on two guys that could get them a minimum of 6 assets for a rebuild, and risk not getting any assets for them just because they need to sell tickets. Do you think they aren't even factoring the assets that they would get for them as they move forward? Because eventually they'll have to rebuild. I mean, if it's not this year, it'll be next year or the year after. But, those guys are not getting younger.
No, I completely agree with you, Kev. I think, and I'm not saying the ticket thing is the be all end all for keeping them. I just think that that's a factor that would play into it. But I agree with you. I mean, as much as it stinks to see your cup heroes move on for any organization, these guys are not in the scheme of it. They're not Sid, and Sid's not going anywhere.
Right.
Sid's a statue out front of the building guy like Mario. Right. So Gino probably is not going to have that. Chris Letang won't either. So it does probably, of the three, and I think we've all kind of looked at it this way, it makes the most sense to move on from Gino. He's probably aging the worst of the three. He's still a good player, and he can still take over moments of games. But he's not that guy he was 5 years ago. And we're naive if we think that we're saying that. But you can still get a great haul for a guy like that. And would be shocked. Yeah, I would be shocked if they're not at least checking on that. I just don't think it will happen unless someone really blows them away.
Well, the other element is he is willing to move. I've been told by sources that he is willing to go, and he has a no move clause. So that's important that he would be willing. Now, he's not going to go everywhere, but I'm sure he'd go to places where he's got a chance to win, and then it's just a matter of what assets you're getting back. I think it would actually help the team for now to move Malkin.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. And you know what, Kevin? Maybe the Florida Panthers come into play. He lives down there anyway. And talking of selling tickets, I think that would do a nice job of selling some tickets in Sunrise compared to combined with everything they have. You put a Gino on that team, maybe you get a goaltender out of there that would help the Penguins, and as long as it's not Bob. I mean, because then you're not really gaining much there. But I think they have assets that could make a Gino type deal. I don't know. What do you think about that?
What they do, it's just a matter of whether they want to make that deal. I mean, they do have assets. They have players that are listed in the top 75 prospects that the NHL. But one thing about the goaltending, there's not going to be a lot of, and I just had this conversation with the general manager, there's not a lot of goaltenders out there. Unless, you're interested in
Frederik Andersen, Antti Ranta. I mean, this is why Anderson's commentary in the season-ending media availability that I was just on a couple minutes ago, he basically sounded like sayonara, thank you for the 5 years. He knows that he's going to get lots of offers in free agency in spite of his lack of playoff success in Toronto, but He's the best goalie out there. Bennington would have been the best one. He signed the contract. Right. It's Anderson and a few others, and that's it.
Well, the big goalie thing that's going on right now is the theory that Seattle will take a bunch of them. And because Seattle has
there's a limit to how many they can take.
Yeah, they're limited. Yeah,
it's 4. It's 4.
You can take 4. That's a lot. So I mean, and when you consider that each team can only block them out of taking one of them, so there's goalies out there.
Yeah. They'll take them. They'll take the max of 4. Trade 2 of them. Keep 2 of them.
And I think
none of those guys that they're going to get are all that exciting. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess.
Well, they could get Fleury.
They could get Holtby from Vancouver.
Doesn't Fleury have a no move clause?
He does.
Well, then Leonard doesn't.
But Vegas is not subject to the expansion draft.
That's right.
I always wondered about that. If you had 2 goalies with a no movement clause.
Yeah.
But that's right. It's Vegas.
Kevin, you've always kind of been like a Brian
Oscar
Berkowitz.
Dansk. Poor Oscar Dansk will be on the move.
There you go.
Dylan Ferguson. Come on, Dylan Ferguson. Where's Garrett Sparks when you need him?
Kevin, you've always been like a Brian Burke whisperer to a degree. I found that you have a good. What are your senses on what he would do in Pittsburgh? I
think Brian's right on. I think he is prepared for the fact that he may have to live with those guys because, I think that was part of the issue with Jim Rutherford about whether those guys were going to be moved. But I also think that he and Hextall are going to turn over every stone to see what's available because I think Brian just laid it out perfectly. That what we're seeing with Malkin is the deterioration in his ability is dramatic, but the romance of Malkin is far greater than the performance level. And I think people like the idea to bring Malkin in, and I think if you're going for it, like I could see Montreal, wanting Malkin.
Yes.
That would be good.
Coming in there, and they've got assets that they can do. There are several teams. Columbus, I think, would be one, but I can't see them trading Laine for him just because that's a reasonably valuable asset.
And just what Columbus would want to trade for a player who's going to walk away in free agency after a year.
That's the issue. I think that's why they may be a little bit reluctant, but they got to do something because it's going south for Columbus.
But they're going to need to sell tickets too, Kev.
That's the point. They are going to need to sell tickets.
So Malkin would sell tickets for them.
Well, let me ask Brian this before we move on to general hockey stuff. I never thought I would ask this, Brian, but did the Penguins miss the consistent offense of one Philip Kessel? Because he had another great offensive year in Arizona. He's still scoring. I mean, Jason Zucker was brought in. I think, what did he have? 5 goals, 6 goals? He didn't have a good offensive year. I mean, did they miss Kessel's consistency?
Well, that's the thing with Zucker never really has worked out here for one reason or another, at least offensively. You would think on paper, it looks like he'd be a great fit. It looks like he would come in and score some goals. And I often joke, and it's terrible, he will lead the team in scoring opportunities missed because he has so many great looks that he doesn't
used to be a clutch goal scorer. I'm not sure what happened, but
and it's a shame. But I think to a certain extent they miss a guy like Phil just because he had that ability. But in his last couple of seasons here, he kind of dipped a little too. He wasn't that guy anymore.
And it was great to see Game 7. I was there for Game 7. He got hurt for that game. Had he played in that game, I think they'd have beat Washington. But I remember he tried to skate. He couldn't skate, and that really killed him in that game.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I was happy to see him bounce back. But that's been the hallmark of Penguins since the 2 back-to-back cups. They've watched guys move on and replace them with guys who couldn't bring probably what was lost. I mean, they had so much depth. This team had a lot of depth this year, and it was fast and skilled, but they didn't have a Chris Kunitz, or they didn't have a Matt Cullen, Tom Kuhnhackl, or even a Scott, or Dupuis, or even a Scott Wilson played some valuable minutes for them in those 2 cup runs. And the guys that they had now were probably a little too small, a little too skilled. They were waiting for Zach Aston Reese to become one of those players. I don't think he's really harnessed it. I wouldn't be shocked to see him be a guy that's on the move this year. Tanev was great. I think he's living up to that contract better than anybody would have
Yeah, he's looked
anticipated.
great. He's really looked great.
I thought that they needed to give him more time, Brian. I mean, I thought kind of.
I'd like to see him up the lineup a
me
bit.
too. I mean, of all the players that whenever I watched the Penguins, he would impress me. Just like every game, he would do something. He would do something on some shift that would surprise you.
Well,
Plus, he's fun.
One thing about the Penguins is Zucker hasn't worked out. I mean, the trade. I mean, I thought that was going to be a great trade because I always felt the Penguins were one winger short. Like they always had 3 exceptional wingers and they needed 4 because they had 2 great centers. And I thought when they got Zucker, they finally had it, but it hasn't worked out that way. But Penguins were still second in the NHL in offense. Like I mean, they didn't need Phil Kessel. That wasn't the issue. But one thing that is important, and I thought with the Penguins is, and I thought when they got the 2-headed monster there with Berkey and Hextall, it was perfect because they are a franchise that goes big all the time. And you need Berkey to run a organization that goes big all the time. Like they don't fool around. They go big. They get Jeff Carter at the trade deadline. They don't get a defenseman to plug in at number 6. So I think it's important. That's what Pittsburgh expects. They have a guy like that, full of bluster, aggressiveness, going for it now. But it's been a long time, if ever, when the Penguins have had a guy that's good at drafting. And Hextall is that guy. He is good.
That's what I'm excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, and he needs to start that this season. Like, I mean, this isn't something we're going to start in 3 years.
Yeah,
and he's got to get it right away. He's got to find some people
to do it. They need picks to do it, though, Kev. They don't. And
no, I understand that, but you gotta start somewhere. And it has to be this year. With you hold a meeting and you tell everybody, every draft that we make, every pick, we gotta analyze it.
So isn't there a dichotomy of like the patient Ron Hextall and the non-patient Brian Burke at work here? Like, I mean, when you've seen the two of theirs histories, I mean, Hextall got run out of Philly because he was just so patient that he made people insane here. Like they were,
Brian Burke is, despite all of his bluster, is very respectful of people that he trusts and admires, and I think he has trust and admiration for Ron Hextall. I think he made that clear to him when they had their talk, because Hextall, I was told, had trepidation just for the reasons you articulated. Yeah. And I think he came away from that meeting realizing that those who know Berkey well is like he knows what Hextall's strengths are, and he also knows what his strengths are. Now, it might come into conflict if they're close next year and Berkey says, let's go all in, let's give away our first round pick yet again. Or do they even have next year's? I've lost track.
Yeah, they do.
I believe they have next year's, not this year.
Yeah,
not this year, no. So I mean, that could be an issue then. But even then, I think Berkey knows that they have to start thinking about, moving forward with this organization. They got to start thinking of finding stars.
Well, they have a guy. They have Sam Poulin, who really had another great year in the queue this year. He's a big kid. He's a winger, Kev, and he can get to the net, and he has good hands. They may want to give him a look in camp and preseason. That's
start. But when I say stars, I really mean like players with an aura, because this is
he doesn't have that. No,
this is Pittsburgh. They want stars. Like they want a guy. They want a Mario, a Sidney, someone of that ilk, and. So it's going to be important that they figure that out.
Yeah, we've had that every year. Yeah, we've had it every year since '84, essentially.
Some form of
that. I mean,
in Philadelphia,
crazy.
I'm saying enough already. Well, you went from Lemieux to Crosby. That's it. You got it. You're good.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're talking about a perfect marriage within the Metro division in terms of trading partners, I think probably Columbus and Pittsburgh would be it, because Columbus has got a truckload of draft picks, and Pittsburgh's got players with term, and anybody that Yarmo's trading for are going to be players with term, because he can't hold on to anybody. So he's definitely going to want guys who have 3 or 4 years left on contracts. Yeah. So, maybe that's a destination for a Zucker or a Pedersen or somebody. If they want to move out somebody to have some flexibility in terms of making other moves, that might be something that happens down the line.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, and one thing you mentioned, Russ, about Poulin, I know we talked about that, is if you're worried about the Penguins getting some size and some net front, we were thinking Poulin could bring that just because he's a big body, he can score, and even Laguerre a little bit.
A little bit. Poulin's a much higher end player.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But they both, just with the size aspect, could play a role here. Maybe Legare down your lineup. Poulin might be ready for a look in your top 6 because there's some speculation all of a sudden here that they might be looking into moving a Gensel or a Rust, maybe a Gensel, just because
I wouldn't move Rust. I would move Gensel before.
And since he's smaller and he's not fully a Sid creation per se, but he's definitely better with Sidney Crosby.
I think if you lose Rust, you lose too much chemistry, and he's your clutch guy. Like,
and he's good with either of those centers right now. If they keep them both, he can play with either of them.
Russ is the head of the Brian Rust fan club. So of course,
Rusty's the man. He's now grown here. He, coming in as a mid-round draft pick. Both he and Gensel, to be honest, everyone used to talk about Penguins. Penguins have to find wingers for Sidney Crosby. Well, Ray Shero found him 2 in the 3rd round, essentially, and they've been great to grow into what they've become here. So it's been fun to watch that happen.
Can we transition
to Montreal Winnipeg? Because we have 20 minutes here. So that was good stuff. So let's move on to Montreal Winnipeg as the North finally moves into the second round, which feels like forever to get there. And the 2 teams that I thought wouldn't be there are there, and so I don't know what's going to happen in this series. I'm the last person who should say anything about this because I thought it would be Toronto and Edmonton playing against each other here, but this is a heck of a series. And, the interesting thing about this is, I tried to go through just give you a quick overview. I tried to go through the games they played this year. They, as Karine said yesterday, they each won 3 games in regulation, with Winnipeg winning 3 in overtime as well. So Winnipeg was technically 6-3 and Montreal's 3-3. But the really interesting thing to me about these 2 teams is how terrible they both played in April and May. Like when I was looking at the, in April and May, Montreal has a .417 winning percentage. In 417 winning percentage that Montreal had in April and May. Mike, you're a little loud. You got Mike, move yourself.
Sorry.
No problem. So 417 winning percentage for Montreal in April and May, 438 for Winnipeg in April and May. I mean, those are crazy bad numbers for 2 teams that are in the second round, but it doesn't matter, right? Because they have confidence now, and they've won one round. Price barely played against Winnipeg. He played in 3 of the 9 games, which is crazy. Where, on the other side of things, the Jets, they played their big goalie the entire time. He played all 9 games. So I don't know where to go with
some of that was because Price was hurt.
I was on a podcast with Tom Laidlaw earlier today, and one of our viewers suggested, since this series is going to be decided by Hellebuck and Carey Price, we should just have a jousting match between the 2 goalies.
I knew you were going there
before it starts, and then we don't have to go through the anguish of that it'll probably go 7 games. But his point is certainly valid. Like goaltending it should be a goaltending series. I mean, both the goaltenders played well in the important games in their series, and
it's a goaltending series, but they're complete mirror opposites, because if you look at Winnipeg, they're really strong up front with 3 deep forward lines. I think they have the best third line in hockey with Kopp, Appleton, and Lowry. And their top 6, especially when they got Ehlers back, is fantastic. But their defense, even though it played well against Edmonton, Logan Stanley stepped up, and Pionk has been a really good addition. Is their sort of their Achilles heel. And with Montreal, and obviously I know this from watching them for 7 games, the top 4 of Sherratt, Edmondson, Weber, and Petrie, the only thing I think you can accuse them of going into the series is possibly being gassed because they played so many minutes against Toronto. But their forwards are weak. They're not, they have Suzuki, they have Caulfield, they have Toffoli, but they're just not deep. And unless you can continue to depend on Corey Perry and Eric Stahl to score big goals, which they did against Toronto, but they've made a career out of doing that against Toronto. I don't know. I mean, I'm heavily leaning toward Winnipeg. Probably 5 games.
Don't get yourself Craig buttoned here, Mike. We don't want to have that happen to you.
Yes, we've 4, no problem. Yeah,
right. Well, yeah. So you got them in 5. I still got to hear what you guys have to say. Kevin, what's your thought on this one?
Well, it's funny that he should mention the defense, because when we started this conversation, I was thinking about the conversation we had when the season started. And if you remember, I brought up, like, people were talking about Edmondson as if he was a 3-time Norris Trophy winner. Do you remember how the discussions were like, oh my God, we've solidified our defense and now we've got it. It's going to be perfect now. Well, you know what? He was that good. Like, he wasn't Norris Trophy good.
He was pretty good
all year. And he did exactly what fans in Montreal hoped he was going to do. And he's done a really good job. And Mike's point about defense versus offense, that's going to be a factor as well. Not only do they have Carey Price, but they have a defensive group that's pretty good. But saying all that, the dynamic nature of Winnipeg's offense, coupled with the fact that Scheifele, we always talk about teams that are better prepared for the playoffs than they are for the regular season. Scheifele is a playoff style player. He's a shot blocker. He likes the gritty game. He likes to. I don't know if he likes being hit, but he acts like he does. And he was born to be in the playoffs. I just think Montreal doesn't have anybody like that. You could talk about Gallagher, but it's not the same.
Scheifele he likes to be hit, except if it's from Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, that's true as well. So anyway, I'm taking Winnipeg in this series just because I don't think that Montreal has the scoring ability to get by Hellebuyck.
Yeah. All right, Brian, what are your thoughts?
I think it could be a 6-game series for Winnipeg, just based on a lot of what you guys talked about, the forward depth with the Winnipeg Jets. I just love their ability to score big goals. I'm a huge Kyle Connor fan. I have since I watched him play in Youngstown. I got to see that a couple times, and it was so fun to watch him at that level and to see him get to where he is now, and just a lethal kind of player anytime he's out there on the ice. I think Scheifele's defensive play is so underrated. People don't talk enough about it. And to what the stuff that Kevin said about him, he's just that kind of guy. And I think it's fun that he has that Phil Rivers nature. He doesn't cuss or anything like that. That's kind of a neat thing with him that makes him kind of lovable. But yeah, he's still such a warrior. I mean, Wheeler is a warrior for them. And just the way that their offense is going to come at Montreal, you're either going to see games that are triple overtime, 1-0 for a couple of them anyway, just based on the goaltending. But at the same time, I think Winnipeg's going to break through because Carey Price is going to just wear down. That he didn't play a ton down the stretch. Sadly, I know that from my fantasy team too, in which I made a late season deal in a dynasty league, giving up Charlie McAvoy to solidify my goaltending with Carey Price, and then he didn't play throughout or my playoffs. So he cost me. So I'm no fan of his right now. I think that between he and Hellebuyck, I think Hellebuyck will get it done, and Winnipeg they're just so deep and so skilled, and there's a lot of veterans there too that are ready to take the next step. So 6 games for them.
6 games. Russ, what are your thoughts? Well,
I like what everybody said, and I can't disagree with much of it, but I'll disagree with some of it. I think Montreal is the faster team. I'm going to give it a wash in net because this is as good as I've seen Carey Price play when he was playing until the Rangers knocked him out of it. And so I think he's gotten that back. And I think there's a certain amount of how that hurts the opposing shooters when he's playing that well, because he does psych out shooters. Go ask Mitch Marner and a few others.
I was going to say, remember, he's not playing against Leafs shooters, Russ. He's playing against
it doesn't matter.
He's locked in.
There is something about Carey Price, though, that when you go in one-on-one against him, you're thinking about it. I do think because of Montreal's defense being a little deeper, there is a chance they could lock down on Winnipeg's offense because they were able to do it to the Leafs too. And I think because of that, games will be close. Maybe they'll have one that slips away and it gets, and Winnipeg does kill them and maybe their offense peaks. But Winnipeg does have some weak spots on defense too. They have a couple of weak spots. I think I'm going to go Montreal in 6. I am, because I really think no, but it's not. See, it's not.
No.
You ride Montreal. Rest
You're playing with house money. You won the big money
with house money. I like what Nick Suzuki is bringing, and for as much as he's not Mark Scheifele today, but what he and Caulfield are bringing, what that line is bringing, what the defense is bringing, if they ever got smart and played Romanoff, I think Winnipeg wouldn't want to see Romanoff in there because
Russ, you stole Eck's thunder because Eck was going to be the only one that took Montreal,
you don't
and
know
now,
that.
yeah, watch.
Well, no,
watch.
I already wrote it, so yes, you do know. But
Oh, he did. Okay.
but that's okay. I know you didn't read it, Russ. I know you don't read my stuff. It's okay.
I don't.
Cool. That's cool.
It's no offense. I don't read anybody who's on here. I don't read even Kevin Allen. It's just I'm busy writing all the time. Like
Thanks, Russ.
I
once in a while, I'll read an article.
There's readers and there's writers. I get it. All right, so
There's readers in there.
It's not that I read, but again.
All right, so
I always mean to read it.
I do agree with Russ, who's written many great articles that I've read over the years. But I do agree with Russ for sure. And what he's saying, Montreal is faster, no question about it. I think, and we saw that not just faster, but they play fast. That's what they do. That's what's fun about Montreal is how fast they play, and then they actually play. They do that when they have the right guys in the lineup, and when they don't have the right guys in the lineup, they don't. So fortunately for them, there were some injuries. So Kotkaniemi and Caulfield are in there. Otherwise, who knows what would be happening right now? And I agree with you. Romanov's another guy who plays fast, so I think he would be great to have in there too. Hopefully, he does get in there at some point. You think he might? They're
so good in transition, Eck, with that speed. When they get that mistake made, they're so good turning it up ice.
They really are, and that's where Winnipeg struggles a little bit because as good as their three forward lines are, they're not the greatest defensive offensemen on those three lines. Those nine guys are not. I mean, Scheifele, I agree with you, but beyond Scheifele, I'll give Connor Brown too. But there's some guys on there that I would say that are not great defensively. And I think that
Ehlers has a little Nylander in him, but he's been a dynamic scorer this year. Now, the one thing that's concerning, and I saw. I think it was Ken Wiebe tweet out was that Paul Stastny was not at their skate. Now that may have just been, that may have just been maintenance, and he may play
in and out. But he's an important player, but I don't think he's a vital player to them right now.
For faceoffs, he's important.
Yeah. He scored an important overtime goal for them against Edmonton, and if he's not in the lineup, then you're basically moving everybody up. Then it breaks up your three lines. So I think it is important.
So my guy who's going to win this series for Montreal is Anderson, and I think that we didn't see that much of him. In Toronto against.
He's been a ghost since game one. He was great in game one, and then he disappeared.
He had moments. He had a couple of moments in game. I just have a feeling that
against Winnipeg, against his his old buddy Pierre-Luc Dubois as well, who they are tight. I could see that Anderson wakes up here and becomes a force. And if Anderson becomes a force, that changes Montreal a lot because he's off. He's bigger. He's also fast, but he's also bigger. He will crash the net. When he's on his game, he's as good as anybody. And when he's really playing well, he's dangerous. I think Carey Price is so in the zone right now, more than I've ever seen. And honestly, than I can ever remember him. Just his reactions to are so minimal to winning or goals scored or anything. That he's just so there. I think Montreal's just got something going. And I am not a Hellebuck fan. And unfortunately, Hellebuck's a great goalie, but for some reason in the clutch situations, I'm not a Hellebuck guy. Where I am a clutch situation, Carey Price guy. So that's where it comes out to. So I have Montreal on 7.
Okay. Here, because we got 20 minutes left here. Let's start with the game last night. Carolina and Tampa. And honestly, as I thought when we were doing the predictions for this series, and in spite of, I think, Carolina's impressive players on offense with guys like Aho and Svechnikov, this is like a college team playing against their JV. That's the impression that I get. It's like you've got Vasilevsky, who should have maybe won the Conn Smythe last year against basically a rookie in Nedeljkovic. I like Carolina's defense. I think, but you see Hedman and you see McDonough and you see Sergachev, and you're like, okay. And I mean, they're playing better. And then how many guys up front for Tampa? I mean, it was a tight game. They were both tight games, but I just get the feeling that in terms of class and in terms of experience, this is, an understudy and an Oscar winner.
I was so glad that Keith Jones said this was a boring game afterwards because
yes.
Well, the Lightning right now are reminding me of the Chicago teams that won with the core players that won the 3 Stanley Cups, because that Chicago team, basically they would just sort of in the first period kind of analyze how you wanted to play, and then they would adjust their game. Tampa Bay was more than willing to play shootouts with the Florida Panthers. And when they get in those shootouts, they basically were saying, you'll need 6 to beat us if we're going to go shoot.
Right.
And sometimes Florida had that because Florida could do it. That's why it was a series. But Carolina doesn't want to play that game. And so Tampa says, all right, we'll play boring defense then. You guys want to play? Because we can do that. We got Vasilevsky. You got a rookie in that. So we're going to win this battle. So they're happy to do that as well. And the other current here that nobody talks about, like I think the Lightning understand that this might be the last time for this group. They've got still have salary cap issues, and they're not going to be easily fixed. They've got other players that they're going to have to pay up on, and they're not going to be able to re-sign a couple of guys, and someone's going to have to move out, and everyone's talking like they got it figured out. But it could end up being someone like Palat or Killorn, or so. I think they're sort of playing, even though they won last year, they're also playing, well, we got to go for it again. So I think there's a lot of motivation for the Tampa that you don't normally see with a team that's already won.
I agree, but they have a lot of prospects that can replace some of those guys, Kev, and I think because they are so deep, that will help them. The other thing is, I think what Carolina took for granted was that, hey, they went and got Hakanpää at the trading deadline, so they bolstered their already good defense, but they didn't account for if they were going to have trouble scoring against Vasilevsky, and they didn't pick up any offensive help at the deadline, and they should have, because when you go up against Tampa, just like you said, they could beat you one way or they could beat you another. So you should have tried to bolster yourself in both ways, and they didn't do that. They only bolstered their defense.
It was so fascinating, that game yesterday, because if you watch, I've watched every game of the Florida-Tampa series, and then watching that game last night, the difference is so striking, because the way you have to beat Tampa, so Carolina and Brind'Amour go in there, like, we're going to keep them. They kept them to 15 shots, like that.
Right. That's their game plan.
That's insane. We're going to keep them to 15 shots, but how do you keep? The only way to keep Tampa to 15 shots is to not press too much, like not let your defense pinch, not go too deep. You can take out, like, the Carolina had shots, but they were outside shots. They weren't like crashing the net shots. Right. They weren't just throwing balls to the wall. They weren't going everything they could, which what you would see Florida would do. Florida would play like that. There's 30 seconds left in the game type hockey all the way through the second period. But Carolina's not doing that at all. Carolina's playing very reserved. They're staying back. We're not going to give them chances. They're just not creating any offense. So the reality is that they have to play desperate hockey, and they're not. And watching them not play desperate hockey, thinking that they can just win games 0-0, they're not going to win 0-0. You're just not going to win.
They haven't adjusted. That's one thing Brind'Amour has made a mistake on. I think they've got some injuries, and they don't have the most offensive depth, and that's what I talked about. But they still haven't adjusted their game plan in game when they're saying, okay, we're doing so much defensively to maybe cover up a little bit for our goalie, and we're clamping down so much that we're sacrificing offense. And at some point, you got to cut Svechnikov loose a little more and try and do that, because you're not beating Tampa otherwise.
The perfect example, they didn't pull their goalie till they were down by 2 goals, till there was a minute 40 left. Like, they're down by 2 goals in that game, having not created any offense at all. Right. Yeah. And they don't pull their goalie with opportunities to do so until there's a minute 40 left. Yeah. That's just the case. Like, we're going to continually stick by this, like, counterattack from nowhere.
But Brian, I think Carolina is damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they open it up against Tampa Bay, then you've got Kucherov and Stamkos and Point and all these guys who can just kill you that way, like Kevin was saying. So I think it's death by strangulation or death by firing squad. They can't win either way.
No, I think you're right. I mean, but they are keeping it a little too close to the vest here. I know last night, in the waning moments of that, with the goalie pulled, they were still just hanging on the perimeter. Yeah. It was pass around. There weren't shots. And it was one of those scream at your television moments where you're just like, get the puck to the net and get a body there. I mean, they were scoring goals on UC Saros by going to the net. They were one of the last games when they had to tie it up, they scored because they got a rebound and Hamilton jumped in and buried it. I mean, they weren't doing that against Vasilevsky. So I'm sure that gets in your head a little bit as a shooter. And when you don't have the offensive depth to open it up and play fire wagon hockey with a team like that, you got to certainly take your opportunities in the offensive zone, and they're not doing it. So I guess now you just have to find the right way to open it up from the blue or from the center ice in, maybe the blue line in, and get a couple more offensive looks, because you are doing a good job defensively to hold that team to 2 goals. If you had a little bit of firepower work, and I know you're not going to always score 3 or 4 on Vasilevsky, but you got to work a little harder to get it done. It's almost like we talked about with the Pens. More traffic, get some bodies there, take Vasilevsky out of his comfort zone just a little bit. They weren't doing it at all last night.
I mean, they were relying on Jordan Stahl, when he's playing great, yes, he can give you some offense, but he can't carry you. And they were relying on him for game after game after game.
Exactly. That's not his main thing at all. And, no. And they really need to play desperate. They need, and I think they will. Like, I have a feeling that Brandon Moore will make that adjustment in game 3 and 4, because it's so friggin' obvious. Like, you just cannot. They can't play the game they're playing and win against Tampa. They just can't.
Here's what I would say to the chat room. You're right. Vasilevsky did make some great saves, but Vasilevsky wasn't as locked in last series, and I think it's easier for him to lock in the way Carolina's playing. That's the problem.
Yep.
He makes the way you score, and I talk to people in Florida about this. The way you score on Vasilevsky is ugly. You got to score ugly on him. You just got to throw things at it and ugly goals. You're not gonna beat him 1-on-1. You're just not going to. And even a 2-on-1 pass across, he's going to get across. He's that good. You have to cause chaos.
He just looks huge in his net. He's just always so big. He just looks big.
Yeah, he's not a giant goal. I mean, he's like 6'2", right? So he's like, but
he's a string bean. Now, Brian, let me ask you about the team that you obviously know a lot about, since you saw them play Pittsburgh 6 games, and that's the Boston and the Islanders series. I thought the Islanders dodged a major bullet because they were up 3-1 in the third period, and then, what a shock. Bergeron and Marchand scored to tie it up. And, Islanders had the advantages early in the overtime. Then Boston rallied and had a bunch of chances. And then the Lawson error ends up with Suzuka scoring the game winner. And now they go 1-1 back to Nassau. And, that's a tough building to win. But if there's one team in this playoff that I think has the sort of veteran moxie to go and win at the Nassau Coliseum, it's the Bruins. So I think, this is a series. I love this series. These two teams play the same type. They're beating the crap out of each other, and I love it.
Well, the Bruins can certainly skate with the Islanders better than maybe people would have thought pre-trade deadline. It's amazing how they kind of made themselves fast from top to bottom, and a lot more depth with those 2 deals bringing in, or the couple of deals they made when they brought in Hall and Lazar. And I even like Riley there. He's been very good so far. So I think that they have the depth to compete with an Islanders team that may not have a lot of superstars, but they're a very deep group that's I think very underscored in their ability to score goals. I know they only averaged something like 2 goals down the stretch from the acquisition of Paul Marion, but they were outstanding on the penalty kill. They were so good defensively. It was just a matter of getting the goal scoring going. And lucky for them, Tristan Jarry woke up the Giants, because now they look like they can score on guys like Tuukka Rask. So I think that's going to be fun to watch these two teams kind of duke it out. I think the Bruins are still going to end up winning it because they just look so good. They look like they can come at you in waves now.
Yeah, they do.
But the big other wild card, what's Trotz going to do with his goaltending? Because he's played both guys in 2 games. He got the loss. He got the win. Is he just going to ride the hot hand? Is he going to go back to the youngster? Is he going to stay with Varlamov?
He's going to stay with Varlamov.
Yeah, I think he will
stay
now.
with Varlamov. I've just been checking.
Until he gets shelled, right? I mean, if he gets shelled a game, maybe
he'll have no problem changing it at all.
I've been checking Andrew Gross's account, and to me, he gets everything up to date.
Yeah.
He basically said lines and D pairs are the same, and if lines and D pairs are the same, then he's going the same with Varlamov.
Well, especially following the win,
The last thing we have to talk about here with Kevin is the draft lottery tonight, Kevin.
Yes.
Because we got Detroit with the 7.3% chance, I guess it is.
I think it would be
terrible luck forever.
I think it would be humorous and ironic if the Red Wings, whose fall from 1 to 4 last year, I think sort of triggered this reformation we had in the draft lottery. Like, they've been talking about it for a few years, but that Red Wing team was so bad, and to see them fall to 4 was kind of like the last straw. Everybody said, all right, enough's enough. We got to all do this a little bit. So, now you can only find 2 spots. So it would be just ironic and hilarious if with a 7.3% chance of winning if they won the draft lottery tonight. I think it would be absolutely hilarious.
I'm going Anaheim, Detroit. That's the way I think it's going to go.
Yeah, well, but and it's interesting. I Russ knows far more about this than I do, but I just had a guy tell me today that it's not even close to a foregone conclusion that Owen Power will go number 1.
No, but here's an example. Like if Anaheim were to get that pick, right, with Jamie Drysdale being a right-handed shot, Owen Power being a left-handed shot, knowing that they need to bolster their defense, you can't pass up Owen Power. It doesn't matter what you think of the rest of the guys. You can't pass them up. So I think that's a foregone conclusion if Anaheim picks first. I do.
Who, if it's not Owen Power, who is number 1?
I think it could be Beniers if it's not Owen Power. I think it might be Natalie Beniers, yeah. Also a Michigan guy.
Yeah, well, it's a big Michigan draft. And then Eklund is grabbing a lot of publicity at the end.
Yeah, Eklund's grabbing a lot. I just don't think he was able to grab enough. Now, he's playing at a high level. He's playing in the SHL, great in transition. I just don't think he's been able to play enough games, and everybody has enough on him to be able to say, we're going to go with you first. It's not safe enough, and if there's one thing we've learned, and especially now, if the cap's not going up for a while, if you're getting a top 3 pick, you can't flub this.
You got to get it right. Yep.
But Detroit in Sweden. It's a Swedish player in Detroit. Come on, that's like
it works beautifully.
I think if Eklund's still at 6, I think he's the guy.
Yeah.
How big, Russ? Just a real quick.
I don't think he'll be there at 6, though. I don't.
No, I mean that's what people are saying. I don't know. So.
How big is the scouting stuff this year? Because there was a lot of talk about this last season with guys not getting a good look at, and you kind of mentioned it. Is it really as huge a deal as people are making it out to be?
It's a huge deal, but it's not. I think it's being overplayed a little bit by some organizations, so they tamper down the expectations of the fans. But look, there hasn't been a ton of live hockey. There's been some. And you still have last year to look at too. There's plenty of guys. Like I saw Owen Power play 2 years ago at the USHL Classic, which again I'll be back in lovely Pittsburgh in September for that. And so you do have that. There's a lot of stuff out there now. There's like a service Instat who has shift by shift. And even if you didn't have time to watch a lot of games from like overseas and stuff, you can watch guys shift by shift. Everything they've done all season. That's a very big help. So what you are missing live, you can piece together with that. But I still think, if you're going top 3, you can't get this pick wrong because you're a team that desperately needs this pick to be a top liner, top pairing. If you pick a top 3 guy and he turns out to be a second liner, even though that's good, it's not good enough, So I think there is a possibility that happens in this draft.
Well, here's sorry, I thought a Mack truck was driving down my street again. This is
under attack, Mike.
There you go. This is by a fleet of trucks. This is the concern I have in regards to the top 3 of this draft. If a team like Detroit wins the lottery or a team like Anaheim, I have confidence that their organizations will develop and be patient with these players and do the right thing. A team like Buffalo, if they win the lottery and take a kid like Beniers or a kid like Power, with the state that organization is in, they could, I think all of these players, and we had Rachel Dory on the Off the Post show on the weekend, and she was talking about these prospects, and it's basically saying she thinks all of them would benefit from not playing in the NHL this year and the organizations being patient. I don't know with the state that the Sabres are in, whether they will be patient and rush a player.
Here's the beauty of it, Mike. The beauty of it is if the Sabres take Owen Power as an example or Kent Johnson as an example, all they have to say is, hey guys, we're going back to college. This is what my plan is to play is at least 2-3 years in college. There's nothing the pro team can do about that. Nothing. Right. And so in a way, they'd be protecting themselves from themselves.
I have to say something I just did. So I just did the draft lottery simulator on here, Kevin. And you're gonna freak out. It's so funny. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I'll just do it because we haven't done it. This is literally what happens. I don't know if you can see this or not, but let me see if I can get this right. Okay, so here we go.
I guess Ottawa.
No, where's my friend?
You're like a grandmother.
Just tell us.
No, here we go. No, here we go. Okay, so there we go. At the top, Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. Yeah,
Detroit wins the draft lottery. My draft
and
lottery.
Ottawa second. That's hilarious too.
Listen, Ottawa in second would be in the catbird seat because they would have the choice. To me, because again, I love Beniers, I love Brant Clark, I love Owen Power. They would be getting one of them, and then by nature would be getting at least the only two defensemen who I think have a chance of being top pairing defensemen. And so in this league, that's pretty good to go after, and Ottawa still needs that. So Ottawa would be in the catbird seat.
And talk about a team that could be a Colorado in a couple years. Say for example, they get Power at number 2, and then you have Power and Sanderson and Shabbat on that blue line. And Shabbat's already established as a really good defenseman, a point guy on the power play. And then you have Brady Tkachuk and all the young guys at forward, and Stützle and all the young guys at forward. That team within 2 to 3 years is going to be a juggernaut.
That's why I would add one more defenseman, because you're right. Sanderson's going to be great too, but I want like 4 solid defensemen on that team, and that's why I would go defense first, just for Funky to answer him. I think there's a chance Lucas Raymond plays for the Red Wings next year. If he looks good in camp, I could see him getting an extended look right out of the gate. He's one of the best guys from that draft, and he's been playing great. So that's just my opinion.
I think he will for sure. I think they have those guys penciled in. They may throw Lucas Raymond down to Grand Rapids for some games. I think they've both will be in the lineup next year. I've actually was told by a general manager that his scouting staff believes firmly that Owen Power will play next year in the NHL. That he's usually defensemen, they don't say that, but they think he's just poised enough to do it.
I think he can, but the only thing I would want for him is he does everything you want a defenseman to do in the league. You don't have to start him on the top pairing. That's fine. But he can be a little physically stronger. Like, this guy's got a frame, and he's strong for college. He's not really strong for the pros. If I could bulk him, not even bulk him up, just get him stronger one more offseason, I think the impact is greater than putting him in and watching him, be okay or good but not great. That's the only thing. But look, in this league, we rush number 1 guys in the league regardless. So, most likely that team is going to put the pressure on him to do it, and most likely it'll happen if he goes first overall. If he goes second, I can see him going back.
He definitely has a Simpson-esque name, doesn't he? Like to be like Owen Power, the hockey player Owen Power. It's just like anyway. That's all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you, Brian. It's so great to see you. Please don't be a stranger. Come back again soon.
Thanks for having me. At any time, boys. I love talking hockey with you, and it's always good to come back home and spend some time with you.
We'll take you up on that. Believe us.
Awesome. Let's remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. Remember, Vancouver's going to win. And I got to end the show, which is hidden behind a bunch of things. There you go.
Someday.
Remind me tomorrow. Restart my computer. Nope. All right, here we go. See you guys.